covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. There's been some buzz recently. I wrote an article about the time I met Chris Benoit 3 weeks prior to the tragic double murder-suicide. It was picked up by multiple sources. I posted this on Reddit within the Squared Circle group. It has about 408,000 members on Sunday. It was the hottest trending article for about 24 hours. About 3,900 upvotes, over 500 comments. So if you've read it, I greatly appreciate it. You can also read it at thesignaturespot.com. It is a true story. It took place on my birthday, May 28th, 2007. For whatever reason, I was just reliving the story in my head that day, and I realized I've shared it with dozens of people. I never documented it. So figured I would write the story about it. I'm not condoning his actions, obviously. Very unforgivable final days of his life, very morbid as well, but I had a great experience meeting him, so I just wanted to document how that went and also what he said during our brief encounter. Also, I wrote something on Twitter about Kurt Angle's dark match versus Owen Hart back in early May of 1999, where Owen Hart actually came back through the curtain. He boldly proclaimed that Kurt Angle would be a future world champion. Kurt Angle replied to it. That was also picked up by some news outlets, such as WrestleZone.com. So again, I'm humbled by this. I don't have an ego. This is not bragging. I just think it's great that some of these articles, some of these posts have been trending and picked up by multiple sources. On the program today, we have quite a bit to cover. Recaps of WWE Super Showdown. It feels more like the roast of Super Showdown, worst event of the year, hands down. New Japan Pro Wrestling, Dominion, Raw, Smackdown, 205 Live, NXT, and I answer your questions in our topic of the week.
Your weekly recap.
I may need a few shots to get through this one. Do I have to do it? A Super Showdown recap. A few notes before I dive into it. It was 101 degrees at ringside, which is 38 degrees Celsius for my Canadian friends. The translation either way, it was friggin' hot. Saudi officials refused to grant WWE permission to stage a match between Natalya and Alexa Bliss on the card, so they flew all the way to Saudi Arabia just to sit on the sidelines. Extremely disappointing, not surprising. Also not surprising, Seth Rollins retaining over Baron Corbin. Same with a potential Brock Lesnar cash-in. Heyman fumbled around. He accidentally dropped the briefcase, which distracted Lesnar. Fortunately, Rollins took advantage. He was able to fight him off while eventually landing the stomp with Brock's head onto the briefcase. I enjoyed the post-match antics far more than the actual match, but it's still so disappointing that the Beast even requires a briefcase in the first place. Finn Balor versus Andrade was easily the best match on the show by a long shot. Shane McMahon defeating Roman Reigns was laughable at best. It was inevitable one of Shane's buddies would get involved. Drew was the logical choice, I suppose. The live audience did not make one peep for Lars Sullivan versus Lucha House Party. It was every bit as bad as expected. It was your proverbial bathroom break. Randy Orton versus Triple H went on for about 10 minutes too long, and it was easily the worst match the two have ever had together. Triple H has so much more to offer as COO, so I would prefer to see him permanently hang up the boots, although I was humbly surprised to see Randy Orton win this match. Both Braun and Bobby had their stocks drop following their lackluster big man match that was poorly booked and poorly executed. Given the talent involved, Kofi Kingston versus Dolph Ziggler was extremely underwhelming, but I'm looking forward to their steel cage match at Stomping Grounds. Saudi Arabia's own Mansoor won the 50-man Battle Royal. By the way, I was reading there are actually technically 51 participants, which is par for the course for such a chaotic event. Mansoor was signed to the WWE at Greatest Royal Rumble ever. I believe he shows plenty of potential, but it was so convoluted, nearly impossible to follow. I did love the pop that he received upon winning, but what does he receive here with the victory? There's no championship match. He's not even on the main roster. There's no trophy, no money prize. just bragging rights? I mean, it's still good enough in this atmosphere for him because, of course, it's his home country, but still give the guy something. He won a 50-man battle royal. The Undertaker versus Goldberg was a match that should have never been scheduled in the first place. It was sloppy, reckless, and cringeworthy. I lost count of the amount of oh gods I slipped out during this match, and it really started to go downhill after Goldberg went for a running spear into the corner but legitimately hit his head on the ring post. He apparently suffered a concussion. Then it got even worse. Undertaker dropped Goldberg on his head during a very dangerous tombstone pile driver. Then Goldberg dropped The Undertaker on his head during a failed jackhammer attempt. Saw some fans responded to me by saying, "Hey Chris, it was a brainbuster he went for." But my question would be, when was the last time you saw Goldberg hit a brainbuster? It was a failed jackhammer attempt. He tried to pick him up, just didn't work out. And after a failed tombstone piledriver reversal, Taker landed a half-hearted chokeslam to win the match. Both men are to blame for this awful match. It takes two to tango. But why did the WWE even schedule this? Shame on them. And I will still never fully understand why The Undertaker didn't formally retire following WrestleMania 33. It was an emotional conclusion to an unmatched career where he clearly passed the torch. It doesn't get any better than that. I take no pleasure in this, but my overall rating would be maybe a 3 out of 10. Even the better matches were totally diluted. They were watered down, and it ended up being arguably the worst event of the year. Full disclosure, even if you were to pay me money, I'm not going to watch the next event in Saudi Arabia. That is not a political statement. The shows are just totally not worth it. A few post-event notes. Upon leaving the ring, Goldberg apparently collapsed. Regardless of your opinion about him and his performance, you have to feel bad for him at that moment in time. Ali is donating the money from this event to charity. Very admirable, and I wish others would follow suit. And The Undertaker reportedly liked the following Instagram post. "Can you please stop bringing Undertaker back now? Jesus Christ, after everything he's done for the company, just let him retire in peace." Literally, the match was terrible because those two guys are in their 50s. They can't compete at main event level anymore. You saw how Undertaker was struggling to stand after just 5 minutes, and Goldberg was too weak to even pull off a jackhammer. Just let them live out the rest of their days in peace, or they'll end up getting seriously hurt. If you're debating on catching a replay for your own sanity, skip it. Going from one end of the spectrum to the other, New Japan Pro Wrestling Dominion took place very early on Sunday morning. I caught the majority of the matches, of course, on replay, and the show was understandably very, very solid. The final 3 matches really stood out to me, but before we get to those, a few notable moments. U.S. champion Jon Moxley defeated Shota Umino in a non-title match. It was short but sweet. Moxley received a huge ovation. Post-match, he announced he wants in the G1 Classic. Someone else who wants in the G1 Classic is Kenta, getting back to his roots, formerly Hideo Itami in NXT. How did they screw him up so badly? He comes back to where he carved out his legacy. The response from the live audience was massive. He wants to participate in the G1 tournament. He could be a favorite to win it. I awarded Match of the Night to Will Ospreay versus Dragon Lee, a high-octane match with many spots that made me legitimately hop out of my seat. Will Ospreay is your new IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion, and Will is an early contender for Wrestler of the Year in 2019. Kota Ibushi and Naito essentially attempted to kill each other for over 20 minutes, and neither man backed down. Though at one point, Naito hit a German suplex to Kota Ibushi. As it took place on the ring apron, Kota landed directly on his neck, and I swore he broke it. It was somewhat cringeworthy, but the entire match was incredibly entertaining. Naito gained his IWGP Intercontinental Championship back after losing it just over 60 days prior to Kota Ibushi. And in the main event, it was Okada retaining his IWGP Heavyweight Championship over the David Bowie of professional wrestling, Chris Jericho. While the match did not live up to recent Okada classics, it was still pretty damn solid. And following the loss, Jericho attacked Okada until Tanahashi came out for the save. Jericho declared himself the greatest of all time, even in this, quote, BS country of Japan. I'll see you soon, Okada. Happy championship, bitch. My overall rating would be an 8 out of 10. This event is worth watching from start to finish. Over to Monday Night Raw, the Universal Champion Seth Rollins kicked off the show. He, of course, mentioned fighting off Brock Lesnar. This brought out Baron Corbin, Sami Zayn, and even Kevin Owens. So later on, it will be Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins in the main event. And then also, we had a bit of a rematch of sorts. It was Lars Sullivan versus Lince Dorado Kalisto in Grand Metalik. It was a handicap elimination match. Who do you think got the victory? It was the freak, Lars Sullivan. R-Truth and Carmella were shown running backstage to get away from the usual suspects who want a crack at the WWE 24/7 title. They ran into an elevator. It stopped. Truth, EC3, Carmella, Cedric Alexander, Drake Maverick, and Heath Slater were all inside. It was all being recorded live, apparently. And based on his recent booking, I wouldn't blame EC3 if he was legitimately drinking hard liquor from that red Solo cup. The team of Braun Strowman, The Miz, and Ricochet defeated Samoa Joe, Bobby Lashley, and Cesaro. Despite the current state of Raw, Ricochet has been utilized fairly well since being called up to the main roster. I've enjoyed that ride. Lacey Evans and Alexa Bliss defeated Becky Lynch and Bayley. According to Vince McMahon, booking, the hometown talent is more than likely to lose the match, so of course, Bayley took the pin. Paul Heyman came out to remind us that it's not necessarily a spoiler, but inevitable that Brock Lesnar is successfully going to cash in his Money in the Bank contract. He even teased that perhaps coming up at Stomping Grounds that Brock Lesnar could be the guest referee with Seth Rollins versus Braun Strowman. The odds constantly stacked up against Seth Rollins, Mr. Burn It Down. WWE Women's Tag Champions, the Iconics, feels like we haven't seen them in a while. Peyton Royce and Billie Kay defeated a couple of local jobbers in a non-title match. Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre came out. They drank champagne. They bored the live audience. The anticipated Roman Reigns appearance did not occur. The Revival showed up. They wanted champagne. Shane mentioned, "You can party with us. All you need to do is bring us back some gold." So naturally, it was the Revival, Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder, defeating Hawkins and Ryder, Jimmy and Jay, the Usos, in a triple threat match to win the Raw Tag titles. It's unfortunate for Hawkins and Ryder. I felt as though it was a missed opportunity. They're great talent, underutilized. They were the champions, never had much of a shot to carry them. I was initially worried that this would be a very convoluted match with the triple threat stipulation, but ultimately it was quite good and featured plenty of drama and near falls. Somewhere, Arn Anderson can be seen smiling. In the latest episode of Firefly Funhouse, Ramblin' Rabbit was being attacked by Mercy the Buzzard. Bray Wyatt ultimately drank the rabbit's blood while wearing some clown makeup and a nose, noted it was delicious, and further mentioned the latest episode was brought to you by Ramblin' Rabbit Breakfast Spread. Raw 1999, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin giving The Rock, Vince, and Shane a beer bath. Raw 2019, a twisted puppet show, is arguably the best thing going. My, how the times have changed. And in the main event, Kevin Owens defeated Seth Rollins by DQ. Sami Zayn's over-the-top antics as the guest referee were incredibly entertaining. Overall, this episode of Raw was a definite improvement over recent weeks. Over to SmackDown Live, a quick observation, by the way. Every time the intro to The Miz's theme plays, the majority of the crowd yells, "Awesome!" several seconds too early. Look for it next week. You'll see exactly what I mean. The Miz called Shane McMahon breast in the world and the pest in the world before finally introducing him. Drew McIntyre and Elias also joined Shane McMahon. Shane bragged about defeating Roman at Super Showdown, which led to a loud contingent of the audience to boo. Shane also noted that if The Miz can defeat Elias followed by Drew, they will face each other one-on-one. The Miz defeated Elias with the skull-crushing finale, but he succumbed to the Claymore kick in a losing effort to Drew McIntyre. That was still enough for Shane. He landed some punches, locked in his bizarre triangle choke while he mocked The Miz. Backstage, Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville knocked over what I believe was a Nintendo Switch out of Ember Moon's hands. After they left, Ember stomped around and threw a trash can. I can't imagine that production meeting. How do we provide Ember Moon with even more Mystique? I have it. Let's have her get interrupted while reading a book or playing video games. Oh, and dye her hair red. That screams Mystique. The Smackdown Tag Team Champions of Daniel Bryan and Rowan were prepared to defend their gold against the Yolo County Tag Team Champions to unify both titles. Who are they? I literally have no idea, but they were carrying around cardboard belts, so I was mildly amused. Out came Heavy Machinery, who defeated the Yolo County Tag Team Champions to earn a shot at Daniel Bryan and Rowan. Not sure why this stipulation was made. Backstage, Carmella hid R-Truth in a carrying cart for production equipment, but it got locked, and then she was called to her match. Jinder Mahal found some backstage officials. He wanted to try and pry it open to win the 24/7 championship. Sonya Deville defeated Carmella with a running knee following interference from Mandy Rose. It's a tough couple of weeks for Carmella, who lost the previous week to Mandy Rose. Backstage once again, Alexa Bliss was with Nikki Cross and noted that Bayley has said some nasty things about her, and for whatever reason, Alexa showed that she blocked Bayley on Twitter. Ooh, this is edgy, right? Big E is a national treasure. Let's get that out of the way. The New Day came down to the ring, but they were interrupted by Owens, Zayn, and Ziggler, leading to a 6-man tag team match in the main event. Aleister Black was still trapped in a promo room, but this time around, someone opened the door and let in an ample amount of light. Black freaked out due to a possible sunburn. I kid, but he screamed, "Will somebody, anybody, please, please, I beg of you, please, pick a fight with me? Who is it going to be?" Bayley defeated Nikki Cross following the top rope elbow drop, a very unmemorable match. In yet another backstage segment, Kayla was interviewing Apollo Crews about his non-match with Andrade last week. Zelina showed up, got angry, left. Suddenly, Chad Gable, sporting a new haircut, was standing by taking notes while Apollo was understandably confused. And in the main event, Kofi Kingston earned the win for the New Day after he pinned Sami Zayn following Trouble in Paradise, a good way to close the show. And perhaps most importantly, Big E is officially back and didn't miss a beat. 2 matches I really want to highlight from 205 Live. Chad Gable made his 205 Live debut against Jack Gallagher, and it was arguably my favorite match of the week. It serves as a reminder that Chad was criminally misused on the main roster, and while many may take this as a demotion to 205 Live, at least he's actively on television, and he's going to showcase his talents on a weekly basis. Akira Tozawa versus Oni Lorcan and Humberto Carlello, and also Drew Gulak in a fatal 4-way to earn a shot at the WWE Cruiserweight Championship was simply outstanding. 4 very different styles that got the crowd on their feet. Tozawa and Gulak pinned each other, which will very likely set up a triple threat match with Tony Nese for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. If you missed it, go check out the recent episode of 205 Live. It was great. For NXT, it was great to see Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke actually competing, and with new music, new gear, they took on the team of Io Shirai and Candice LeRae. They came up short. Well, I guess it was a no contest. There was a brawl. Shayna Baszler got involved, but I thought it was a great way to open up the show. I felt Kushida versus Drew Gulak in a submission match was a nice change of pace. Kushida ultimately got his arm raised after 10 minutes when he locked in the hoverboard lock. I also enjoyed the fact that they shook hands at the end of the night, sharing some mutual respect. And in the main event, it was a solid tag team match with Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch defeating the Undisputed Era after Jackson Riker of the Forgotten Sons got involved. O'Reilly got rolled up for the victory. Much like 205 Live, although it wasn't as great in terms of the in-ring action, a simple yet effective show.
The latest industry news and rumors.
During the latest episode of Being the Elite, it was announced that Adam Page versus Jungle Boy versus Jimmy Havoc versus MJF in a fatal 4-way has been officially scheduled for the Fyre Fest event taking place on June 29th in Daytona Beach, Florida. Kenny Omega also confirmed at E3 that it will be streaming for free on BR Live, much to the chagrin of Chris Jericho, who stated because it will be streaming for free, he does not agree with AEW pandering to the fans, so he is pulling out. All Out tickets go on sale this coming Friday. That is tomorrow, June 14th at 12 p.m. in the East. Looks like tickets are very reasonably priced. $30, $60, $90, $140, $160. Ringside tickets will only cost $190. I think that is truly phenomenal. It was announced that Shawn Spears, formerly Ty Dillinger, has agreed to a full-time contract with All Elite Wrestling. He was severely misused, barely used when you think about it, on the main roster, so I'm very excited to see him there. I've seen some fans highly criticize All Elite Wrestling for bringing in yet another ex-WWE guy, but here's the thing. He brings in a ton of experience, a lot of potential, and he's always been an incredible hand. And he's been that way for the past 17 years, so he's somebody I would want on my roster as well, too. Rob Van Dam is officially slated to face Moose at Impact's Slammiversary show next month.
Our topic of the week.
For the topic of the week, it is all about you. I'm answering your questions, so thanks for submitting them. We have Carl. With the rise of other online streaming services offering quality pro wrestling content to the masses, do you feel that the WWE Network will suffer, or is it big enough to have no concerns with other services? The major advantage that WWE offers over other pro wrestling streaming services would be the massive library of content that will never be matched. Whether you love or hate the current product, that library is worth the monthly price alone. Their main concern should be on their current product and how it impacts weekly television ratings. Mike with a two-part question. With creative and storylines being poor on the main roster, what must WWE do to turn things around to get fans invested? Also, why does NXT and 205 Live work so well compared to the main roster? Well, let's go with part one. Stop overly scripting the talent and allow them to sink or swim on their own while still providing coaching if necessary, if needed. Place a heavier emphasis on the in-ring product. More matches and more quality matches. Create storylines based on the traditional 3-arc structure. I talk about this often. Act 1, the setup. That's inciting incident. That's the plot in there. Act 2, the confrontation. That's the rising action, the midpoint. And then, of course, Act 3, that's the resolution, the pre-climax, the climax, and, of course, the actual conclusion of the storyline. And finally, incorporate true psychology into matches. Remember, less is more. It's how you make every move, every reaction, and every promo matter that makes the difference. In terms of part 2, based on those points I mentioned just moments ago, NXT and 205 Live tends to embody many of them. So that has greatly helped out both shows. Also, it's much easier to produce an hour-long program as opposed to a 3-hour Raw on a weekly basis. That is tough, even if you have the best writers and producers and talent on the show. It becomes exhausting, convoluted, and often overexposes talent. Also, Vince seems to have minimal involvement in both shows, especially NXT, since he's never present during tapings. Another factor is that NXT and 205 Live both air on the WWE Network and don't have to worry about network sponsors. Adam, a question on Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose. Do you think his character is a few eras past where he would have been better suited in the Attitude Era? Absolutely not. Jon Moxley is arguably the hottest act in the industry today, and he has transcended eras. Whether it was 20 years ago or in the present day, Jon Moxley would be just as relevant. Kyle, who's often a contributor on the podcast, weird one, but here goes. When all is said and done, who will end up having the more successful post-WWE career, Kenta or Juice Robinson? Well, prior to signing with WWE, Kenta was a big star in Japan. In fact, they even brought out Hulk Hogan for the big signing. Love or hate Hulk, that is a major endorsement. I fully expect Kenta to pick up where he left off. So in the short term, Kenta will be positioned as a main eventer. That being said, he's 38 years old. So Juice Robinson has a lot more time. He's merely 30. So from a long-term perspective, Juice shows a ton of potential. Mark, greatest wrestler to never become WWF or WWE World Champion. I always state Mr. Perfect. Come on, aside from his undeniable talent. That was a built-in storyline, a built-in gimmick. He's champion. He's reigning supreme. Think of the promos. Think if Bobby Heenan was still by his side. That would be incredible. Joe, should The Undertaker have one more match? If so, with whom? I would be perfectly content if The Undertaker just simply rode off into the sunset. If he were scheduled for one final match, though, an ideal opponent, at least in my eyes, would be Aleister Black. Why? An excellent character to pass the torch to. And Edward, what is it about professional wrestling and us fans that make us so passionate and opinionated? Wow, this could be an entire episode because we love storytelling when it's done right. And a great pro wrestling match or storyline can be a very compelling tale. It's dramatic, it's exciting, it's an art form. And just like with any medium that captivates, it can also divide an audience too because we care so much about it. So when it's done poorly, it drives us crazy. And with that, let's wrap up the program. But before I go, I do want to mention an outstanding article courtesy of Ryan Bowman that is featured on thegorillaposition.com. It highlights the incredible Dusty Rhodes titled "The Dream Lives On." Get a dream, hold on to it, and shoot for the sky, baby. Yes, his legacy lives on through his sons Cody and Dustin. One of the most charismatic and captivating entertainers of all time. There's an ode to Dusty Rhodes on this show every single week. Just over 4 years ago, we lost the incomparable Dusty Rhodes. So, in honor of Dusty, happy trails to you. Until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.